ready, let's talk about LARP, shall we? Okay, so just to preface everything, all right? Just to preface everything, the the weekend was, and I'm not kidding, wet as hell, rain, blazing sun, rain. That was the weather. There was about a 10-hour period of like blazing sun, but otherwise it was raining, and I managed to get sunburn in the blazing sun times. But it was, yeah, it was the old fuck you weather. It was great. You know, it wasn't great. What as hell, isn't that dry? Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, but I guess you could infer that. Yeah. So, first thing that we did was I had to find somewhere to camp. And my plan was to stay with Jacob, Jacob, who plays Daegrin, the paladin of Sybil, and my character's tribe mate, Aeryn's tribe mate. But he wasn't there while we were setting up, and he didn't get there until like far later in the night. So I had nowhere to put my stuff, so I stashed it with Victor, this human mage who has been my co-conspirator in witchcraft up until that point. And I just said like, I'll stay here tonight and then move my things when I get an opportunity. He said like, oh, all right, yeah, sure. And so I ended up having to share a tent with a dirty round ear. Ugh. I have a bad taste in my mouth just saying it. God. But at least at least he's a loyal dirty round ear, as they say. Aeryn's kind of a racist. So the first thing that we did coming in the game was we had to get to this island that was covered in brood. This is where the whole goal of the game was: go to this island covered with brood, kill the brood, and like win, basically. That's the whole plan. Go to this moving island and stop it from reaching the mainland. Spoilers, we did not fucking succeed in doing that. And I had no idea how we were supposed to have succeeded, or where the plot was that could have allowed us to succeed. But never mind. It's the actual plot of the game is unimportant to most of what my stories are. You know? Like, I'm sort of tertiary to the actual plot. But so the first thing we did was we had to get there. So we took a portal through the Far Realm, and the Far Realm is like the horrible nightmare Cthulhu world. But I guess you could take a portal through it if you want. You know? Cool. I mean benefits of going through the Far Realm. The demon prince Nilestramus lives in the Far Realm, so I mean, I felt okay. I felt fine. I could have just, like walked out into the darkness of the Far Realm and been like, I am a witch servant of Nilestramus, take me to where I need to go. But everybody else was like, stay away from me, you weird bird, raven, tentacle thing that's trying to eat me, get away, go, you fuck off. But Nilestramus is my demon prince. I serve at his leisure. So it's kind of okay for me. Excuse me. So we went through the Far Realm, and the Furbolg were stuck to me like the whole time during this trek through the Far Realm. Side note, advice for people who want to be in charge of things in the future. Just because you put yourself in a bad situation doesn't mean you put everybody else in a bad situation. Basically, like, we had to march through the dark, and it was, like, all foggy and misty, and it was, like, really, really... The setting was super great, and the ambiance was super great. But some of the ground was really, really wet. And the person leading our group could have, you know, walked around it when they put their foot into a fucking 1.5 feet of water. No, just straight through the swamp. First 3 seconds of the event, and everybody's feet were soaked. Kinda soured the mood. And then after soaking our feet, walking us for 2 hours in a fucking loop. While we fight monsters and, you know, try to stay close to this lantern bearer who's taking us through the Far Realm. The, like, 150 of us that there were. Yeah. So that, you know, I wouldn't say that the opening mod was my favorite thing in the world. Basically. I don't like trudging for no reason. If there's, like, a destination in mind, or a place we're going, or whatever, go there, you know? Yeah. But, like, get our feet soaking wet, then keep trudging for 2 hours. Not my favorite thing ever. And not everybody at the LARP can deal with that shit, right? Like, I mean, I can. Like, I can walk for 2 hours. It's not a big deal. But, like, there are people who aren't entirely healthy, you know, who you're basically, like, forcing to take medical hold by doing that. By making that a thing everyone has to participate in, you're forcing them to take medical hold. And that sucks. Yeah. Anyway, moving along from that. The Furbolg were, like, stuck to me. And I was the only Gen Vespin there at the time, because Daegrin wasn't there. It was just me. So I'm on my own, so, like, the Furbolg sticking to me was kind of, like, good, because I felt as if anything happened to me, I'd be safe, you know? Because they'd kill the shit out of it. But at some point during this walk, they fell behind and disappeared. I don't know where they went. But they reappeared later. So they didn't die wherever they went. So that's good. But we got to the end of this walk, and we emerged onto the island of Brood through the portal. And there were Brood. And we fought them, and we did, like, a fighting retreat into, like, the safe zone, because there's this obelisk in the center of the camp that pulsed like an anti-brood field sort of thing. And the brood are like an insect race that, you know, eats everything and assimilates stuff. But it's like an anti-brood field that, like, pulsed disruption to the hive mind. So we camped around that, obviously. So we fought a fighting retreat with the brood, but then somebody said, like, oh, the Furbolg got stuck behind, and then one of the Furbolg, Bone Taker, comes up to me and says, like, my people back there, you help me get them? And I, of course, like, I hate the brood, so killing more of them? Hell yeah! So I followed Bone Taker back into the brood. There were, like, three of us.
Hug them!
Oh, thank you for the sub. Thank you. So there were, like, 3 of us running back out into the fog to fight the brood. And it's, you know, brood, like that. And there were, like, 8 brood, like 9, 10, 11 brood. I'm not sure. There were a lot. So we were a little outnumbered. It was me, Bone Taker, a wild elf I hadn't met yet, but who became one of my best friends, and another wild elf I hadn't met yet, who became one of my best friends at this event. So we went back out and we got the Furbolg and we brought them into safety, and we tried to heal up the ones who were down and stuff, and everybody was up on their feet and they started walking away, and then Crowley and the undead camp walked in like, hey, that's the Furbolg we are supposed to kill, he's been fucking with us, and just straight up murdered him. And then straight up murdered anyone who tried to stop them. So, like, a whole bunch of the Furbolg got killed again. And I tried to save them. Like, I tried to pick them up or take them away or anything. And there were 7 PCs, seven players who did this ganking as we exited the portal, basically. And said, like... it said, like, if you help them, we'll have to kill you as well. And I'm not willing to stick my neck out that far, I'm not willing to stick my neck out that far. Are the Furbolg NPCs? No, they're players. They're players. The Furbolg are players. They play these, like, cavemen guys. Yeah, I'm not willing to stick my neck out 1v4 when those 4 are undead. Like, I'm not... if it were 1v1, I would take the chance. But 1v4... I'm not gonna do it, self-preservation kicks in, and Aeryn is a creature of selfishness, really. So I put them down, and I hope that they would come back. I hope they'd come back through the resurrection circle. That's what happened. One of them finaled then, right at the beginning of the event, which sucks, but it happens, and yeah, what are you gonna do, right? I felt bad for them because it felt like a shitty situation. It felt like the course of that whole thing where, like, they fell behind because one of them, needed to take a break, and then came in last, and then the brood attacked, and then they were saved from that, and then players killed them. Like, it was just like a cascading bad situation. But they had fucked with those guys last month, like, it wasn't an unprovoked attack. Like, they definitely fucked with them last month. And the guy who finaled made a new character to play for Warcry. So he was still a PC for the rest of the event. He just played a different character. It was Dan. And he played, you guys have met Dan, some of you. The guy, the former lead shaper that I interviewed for like 3 hours, one time. But his character, Bloodmouth, finaled, and he made an Einhar, who was really fun to interact with, and Dan took it in stride, so it's good, But yeah, it still sucks. So that's how we started. That's how we started the event. And yeah, when I say finaled, I mean they took their last death, because you can die a certain number of times and still be okay. You get 2 free ones, and then you start flipping a coin basically every time you die to see if you come back. Well, moving on. Friday night was fairly quiet. I ran into Daegrin after a little while and knew that he was here, and a bunch of other people that I knew from the past. A bunch of other people that I'd met from the past who were visiting for Warcry and so forth. Brynja was there, like Queen Brynja, you may remember from my very earliest Aeryn stories. No longer a queen, but Jarl Brynja. The Einhar badass, and like that whole camp of people were there, and that's where Daegrin was camped, so I had lots of interaction with them, which was fun. I met some new people, some new faces that I'd never seen before, people visiting from faraway lands, such as, out east, the Toronto chapter, Jericho, and the and the other chapters out east, Ashendale, Rallenwood, all that stuff, like they're out there doing their own thing, and they came to visit us for our global Warcry event. So that was awesome. Sort of meeting new people and getting to introduce myself for the first time again to some people. It was fun. There's this ogre fellow named Gigaliath who was super great fun. And my two wild elf buddies who I met and who became fast friends with me, Lark, not to be confused for the paladin Lark, but Lark the wild elf, and Colleen. The two of them I had lots of fun interaction with, and hanging out and just generally having a place to be was great. Who else did I meet? There are a couple of new players that I got to interact with, and that's always fun because they never know what to make of me. I heard from a couple of people that I'd never met that they asked people that knew me if I was like a witch or whatever, because she just looks real scary. She just looks real witchy. So you know what? I think I'm achieving my goals. I'm achieving my goals if I never talk to someone and they think I'm terrifying. That's my heart in that situation just feels so good. Feels so good to know that my demeanor is scary. And a lot of people said that like you walking towards me in that misty darkness or whatever, gives me pause, makes me think, oh God, what is coming behind? What is coming to attack me? Or oh God, what is coming towards me right now? And then it turns out to be Aeryn, and maybe that's not as bad as what it could have been, or maybe it is. And that I got a lot of that at the end of game, which was fun. It was fun to know that I had that ability still. Aeryn has definitely mellowed in her interactions with people, but not enough to not give some people pause. That's nice. I'm glad that that's the case. So, what can I tell you about Friday night? Friday night, we mostly got settled. Killed a couple of incursions of brood, and went to sleep. After the lead-in mod and after a bunch of roleplay, it was done. Like, we were done. Everybody was exhausted, and sleep was sounding like a good idea. So we did that thing. We went to sleep, and prayed that we would not be murdered in our beds. Every time I went to sleep, I had spell packets on me, ready to throw at anything that came through the tent flap. And now I have some real killing power. The Shatter Skull spell. The Shatter Skull spell in Witchcraft. I summon a hex to shatter your skull. You throw a spell packet, and if it hits them, they are put immediately into their bleed count. Doesn't matter how much health you have. Immediately into their bleed count. If anybody tries to heal them, they pulse 1 infliction into that person. Shatter your skull, your default spell if you're attacked in your tent. No, I usually open up with some psionics, like paralysis, or and it depends what it is. Charm. If it's brood, or because charm interrupts the brood hive mind and makes them explode immediately. Sleep is a great spell for people who want to come into your tent and fuck your day up, because then they're alive, and you can have some fun, But I now have a Shatter Skull just tucked away. Blow you up right in the head. Crack. Be great. I'm into it. I got a Shatter Skull. Is Shatter Skull a psionic spell? No, it is Witchcraft. There are two different. I'm sorry. I'm fielding stuff from chat while we go. This is the thing I like about doing a long form IRL talk about LARP is I can field questions, rather than just like tell story. So I have 2 spheres of magic on Aeryn. One granted by her own study and like a book that she studies from, psionics, which has the incant by force of will. So by force of will I inflict sleep. By force of will I grant mind meld. By force of will I inflict ego rend. Like all these spells, it's always by force of will I whatever, and then you throw, or by force of will whatever, and then you touch, so forth. And then there's a second sphere of magic, which she doesn't need a book for, which comes directly from her demonic patron. I learned about the doesn't need a book thing just recently, so collecting all those witchcraft scrolls was, didn't really matter. Comes directly from her demonic patron, called Witchcraft. And Witchcraft has the incant, I summon a hex. So, I summon a hex to inflict horror, or I summon a hex to inflict repulsion sword, or I summon a hex to inflict weakness, or I summon a hex to inflict... I summon a hex to shatter your skull. It's the skull shatter one. I summon a hex to inflict race change toad. Turn people into toads. It's great. You're little frogs. Yeah. So those are my 2 sort of spheres of magic and the things that I can do. Sadly, a lot of their effects are mind affecting, so not good for what do you call it, for undead, because undead are not affected by like mind affecting things. So psionics don't hurt undead, and a lot of witchcraft is like fear and stuff, and it doesn't really affect undead, sadly. So I'm a terrible undead hunter, but I'm really good at certain other things, which is great. Get up. Yeah, exactly. Right. So Friday we slept, perfectly soundly. Woke up on Saturday morning and introduced myself around. I met those 2 other wild elves, Lark and Colleen, and we got to talking, and there was some brood, and we fought those brood, and then we saw like a solo tent out in the distance getting attacked, so we went to go check that out and like fight that battle with like just a couple of us versus a large amount of brood, and we managed to survive. I mean, we had to retreat and drop back because the brood were just busting out of the ground like crazy. Once you were out of the protection of the obelisk, they just spawned like forever, which is a difficult situation to be in. Honestly, it's real tough. So we had to kind of deal with that, and sort of work together to make sure that we didn't get killed. And I cast a lot of spells during that fight, and I got very stuck a couple of times. And with our team around, I wasn't sure who was okay with me casting witchcraft, because witchcraft is kind of a taboo sphere, like it's a thing that you probably shouldn't do, because you have to be, quote unquote in bed with a demon to be able to do it. So people don't like that. Demons are bad. But I wasn't gonna die. I wasn't gonna die and make sure I preserve my secret. Like, I would rather live and have people know. So it got to the point where all I had left was witchcraft stuff. So brood would come at me, and I'd have to, I summon a hex to inflict blindness or whatever to get him. And I tried to be quiet about it. I tried to keep my head down and like make sure nobody heard me and so on. But that maybe didn't work out so well. They may have heard some incants. But what are you gonna do? Sometimes that shit just happens. And we ended up having a conversation later with, I mean, Colleen and Lark talked to me, and they sort of came to a, you know, accord. Like, we weren't immediately enemies because I cast witchcraft, and I was still like one of the better people around here, and what have you. And I'm not corrupting nature, so it's fine, you know. I guess you can do it. They didn't seem very happy about it, but they weren't gonna kill me over it. It was Dagrin that I was worried about, Mr. Paladin of Sybil, Mr. Champion of the Hunt. You know, all that is good and righteous and light in our community. Though still savage, you know. And that conversation was a little tougher. That conversation was a little tougher. I gotta take a quick bio break, but when I get back,